Tonight we learn the haftara Parshas Vayechi, which is from the Vim Rishayim and therefore very different than the previous haftaras in that it constitutes part of a narrative, part of a story. This being the beginning of Malachim Aleph. Malachim is the passing of David. Basically, Shmuel Beis is David HaMelech, Shmuel Aleph is Shaul HaMelech. Shaul dies at the end of Shmuel Aleph. David dies, shortly after the end of Shmuel Beis, here in the beginning of Malachim Aleph. And as its name implies, it's about Malachim, about the different kings. Malachim Aleph has Eliyahu Hanavi, and Malachim Beis begins with Elisha. That's sort of the dividing line. Vayikruvu Yemei David Lamus. The words Vayikruvu Yemei David Lamus, the days of David came close to his death, is the same language used in this week's haftara regarding the passing of Yaakov Avinu. Basically, that's the only similarity between the death and the tzavah of David and Yaakov. What's very noticeable is the difference in the tzavah of Yaakov Avinu and the tzavah of David HaMelech, which are of extremely different nature, as you'll see here in the tzavah of David. That's because Yaakov Avinu's tzavah came in his role as one of the avos. His tzavah has zero to do with the personal lives of almost all the shvatim, except for those he criticizes. But when he says something like Zavulun l'chayf yamim yishka, it has nothing to do with the person Zavulun. Or Asher Shmein Alachba has nothing to do with the personal life of Asher. Whereas the haftara of David HaMelech has everything to do actually with the personal life of David for the most part, except for the very first psukim. And therefore it's extremely different. The Vayikruvu Yemei David Lamus, which is similar to Vayikruvu Yemei Yaakov Lamus, has on it an interesting Arachayim HaKadosh, something which I mentioned in a different venue a few weeks ago. And it's an Arizal, which is quoted by the Arachayim HaKadosh, which is just fascinating. He says that the neshama of a person is comprised of many mini neshamis, or the tzaitzis as he calls them. And every person is born with the number of mini neshamis. You picture it as a cluster of grapes, sort of a cluster of neshamis. You have as many small neshamis as the days that you're going to live in this world. So a person lives 100 years, he lives about 36,000 days. Most of us don't live 100 years, so we live 30,000 days or thereabouts. And there are 30,000 little pieces of neshama. And every night, one nitzitz goes up to Shemayim and is done with this world forever. And the combination of all these little pieces of neshama are what you have when you go up Lachamei V'Esrim. You get a total neshama made up of all these pieces, so that every day has its own place, has its own mark. The day that's Yom Kippur is a more important piece of the body of neshamis, from which the ultimate neshama is constructed. But if one day you have a bad day, so that piece of neshama is a faulty piece of neshama. It gets put together with the others, and depending on how many bad days you had, the conglomerate neshama of everything put together either limps or has poor eyesight or all the other frailties that we can imagine, depending on how it's put together. So Vayikruvu Yemei so and so Lamus, he translates that the days, the pieces of neshama that the person has, they run out. At some point, there's just only one left. Vayikruvu Yemei Lamus means that he's out of time, he's out of days. This gives new meaning to the Gemara says, Ad sheyichle neshama shebeguf. It says the neshamas in the guf have to end. So this gives a more personalized meaning to the idea that the neshamas shebeguf, the neshamas in a person's guf, somehow at some point come to an end. That's this idea. With this, the Arachayim HaKadosh says, we understand what he calls, I think, the side of Shena, of sleeping, going to sleep at night. We say when you go to sleep at night, it's a little bit of Misa. Echa Meshisha Sheba Misa. Because there is a Misa to one Nitzis of Neshama. One Nitzis of Neshama is done with. It's done with, its passage of this world is finished. and it moves on to heaven. And Chadashim La Bekarim, we say the morning is Chadashim La Bekarim, Rabbi Resech, it's Chadash, a new piece of neshama comes to you in the morning. Say the Malach takes your neshama, puts the neshama back. So rather than the image of the Malach just taking it and putting it in storage for the night, then bringing it back, the image is of a piece of neshama going up forever, and a new piece of the neshama that dwells within you having its moment or its day of being the primary neshama. Now, with this he explains a number of other things, why it is, for example, that we're told to give tzedakah every day. It would seem to be more efficient to go once a week or once a month and make your cheshbon and give out your tzedakah. Yet we have an idea that every day we give tzedakah, every day we daven, whatever we do is supposed to do every day. And that's so that each neshama, each piece of neshama, should have that zchus of tzedakah in that piece of neshama. Before you go to sleep, you makabel al malchus shamayim, which is what a person is supposed to do before he dies. A person is supposed to say Shema before he passes on, and really say vidui, the idea of saying vidui before a person dies, before a person goes to sleep, is a me'en of that little piece, so to speak, of neshama, which is now coming to an end. It also explains the idea of certain averis, that it says ein lechelek l'olam haba. It seems unfair or almost ridiculous to say that a person was mevayish someone barabim, so he loses everything. It sounds, for one moment of weakness, a person can lose a whole lifetime. But according to this, it means that piece of neshama, that day's piece of neshama has no chelik. It's gone. So that if you have 30 or 35,000 pieces of neshama, so you're missing one. If you're missing one, you can survive missing a little bit. And once you start doing it too often, you end up having a very faulty neshama that's put together at the end. So that as the Archaim HaKadosh says, the whole Sayyid Hashena is understood with this type of an idea. This idea that every day is a complete nitzutz, a complete idea.
So Shabbos, you have two portions?
Neshama Yisera, you mean?
It's 2 portions?
See, it's interesting. I can conjecture on this, but more than what it says, it's very hard to do. We say have a neshama yisera, so you have something extra. The truth is the way the Kabbalists explain, the Maral explains Shabbos, the neshama yisera, every neshama is comprised of ruach, nefesh, and neshama. Ruach is the ruach hayim, and nefesh habahemi, and the neshama, which I'm sure Moshe has told you on numerous occasions. So the part of your neshama is a nefesh habahemi. The nefesh wants to eat, and sleep, and stay in bed, and rest. And the neshama is kadosh, it wants to serve Hashem. The way the Maral explains it beautifully, he says neshama yisera of Shabbos is the nefesh. The nefesh that wants to eat and sleep, it's doing a holy work on Shabbos, because Shabbos is supposed to eat, he's supposed to sleep, which many of us indulge in on Shabbos. That's why, what's the pasuk for neshama yisera? Vayinofash. Nefesh. Vayinofash. So it's the nefesh that's in the neshama yisera. Maral calls it nefesh yisera. But the Maral's on the Gemara in Beyan, what is it, Tazayin? Eat more food, yeah. So at any rate, that's his idea. The Arvei Nachal, who quotes the Arachayim, who in turn quotes the Arizal, adds another dimension to it. I believe he says that not only does every person have all these pieces of neshama, but every person has additional clusters that he distributes to his children and to his offspring. So the Adam Arishan had all the clusters of all his offspring. Yaakov had all of his, and you sort of give clusters of neshama to every child. And again, Mashiach will come k'sheyichle neshama shebeguf. Adam Arishan had a certain extraordinary number, but a certain finite amount of clusters of neshama, and each one represents a person. And then, when all the neshamas are done, then will be time for Mashiach. And with this he explains the idea of a yichus. But he has a yichus Yisrael because Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov carried our neshamas within them as separate clusters, which they passed down to the generations.
41,000
those clusters from Adam, this haftara, David, right? Adam gave 70 years of his life.
Gave 70 years of his life. Okay, all right. Yes, Adam gave 70 years of his life. It's true. So it's true. That's, I guess, a story unto itself. But anyway, yeah. Okay, good. So whatever he gave David, vayikruvu yemei David Lamus. His days came close to death. He was finished with his days, and that's what he had left. The Gemara says in Shabbos, in B'Mem in the early part that we learned first, that's right after the Chanukah part, it says that David knew he was going to die in Shabbos, and his body would lie uncared for actually a brief period of time, because he died in the afternoon. But he said, "Let me die on Sunday." And Hashem said, "Ei malchus negas b'chaver ta'afilu kamalei nima." You can't impinge on Shleima's time. So he said, "Let me die on Friday." So God said, "Toiv yoyim b'chatzirecha me'ela pacharti." One of your days is worth a lot. The Gemara that says he asked to live one more day seems to contradict this Arizal, who seems to say it's just simply impossible to live another day, because you only have a certain amount of days. There is a Gemara in Yavamis that says you can't live another day beyond what's decreed for a person.
Now, how is it that we say that the gates of Shemayim will open up his tears? If that was supposed to be his last day, how could is there anything?
You should know a rule that when a person is going to die, if a person is sick and dying, and you daven for him to recover, the davening only works if his death is an einish, if he's dying before his time. If he's dying on his time, then the tefillah is fruitless. It's not possible to extend a person's life beyond that's what the Gemara says. It's not possible to extend a person's life beyond the days that he has. Taisus and Yevamim says one exception, but it's the Gemara says you can't. The Gemara says that you can't extend further, and that's basically the way we understand it. So when we daven for a person to live longer, it's the hope somehow that this is an einish, and if it's an einish, he's dying early, then tefillah or schusim could make him live longer.
So Saint Hilden Prachol is the same thing?
Saint Hilden is the same thing. You can only extend a person's life if he has the possibility of it from when he was born.
So
That's what Taisus refers to. That there are times that others lost days, and those days are floating around, and they could be appended to a different person. That's what Taisus says. It just confuses because it's an exception. The Gemara says there's a rule, and it's not. At any rate, this is David. David is dying. As I said, he died on Shabbos and he died on Shavuos. That's why we lay Rus, because it's Shavuos, and then we say Tzidkascha, because Yosef, Moshe, and David died on Shabbos afternoon. Vayikru yimei David Lamus v'yitzav Shloimei b'nai Leimar, and he gave his last will to his son Shloimei, saying. Now, the few psukim we're going to learn today are what you might expect, and the rest of this is certainly not what you would expect. So let's at least learn the initial part of the tzava. Anochi haylech b'derech kol haaretz. David says, "I'm going on the way of everyone, of all those who reside in this world. V'chazakta v'hayisa leish. You should strengthen yourself and be an ish." Now, it's a little difficult. What does it mean, be ish? What does it mean, be an ish?
Until now, he was relying on his father to a certain extent. Now he's on his own.
Now he's on his own, okay. The ish, the pashup shot in ish, is the fact that Shlomo HaMelech was 12 years old at the time. Shlomo became king at 12. A person doesn't have a din as an ish until he's 13. Chazal say that Shimon and Levi were 13 at the time they killed Shechem, because the pasuk says, Vayikach ish charbay, and ish means that they're over bar mitzvah. So ish means to be bar mitzvah. Now Shlomo wasn't bar mitzvah, he was 12. So v'chazak tova yisal ish seems to say to be grown up, to be like a 13-year-old.
The highest form of a man.
The highest. It's the simplest. It's a higher form. Ish, kada, ish. Right? You can append an adjective to ish. But yeah, the Targum, however, translates ish as a ish dochil, as somebody who's Yirei Shemayim. He translates v'yisal ish. He should be a person who carries with him Yirei Shemayim, and they bring a pasuk for that too. When when the Rebbeinu Shalom told Moshe to appoint Moshe Rabbeinu asked HaKadosh Baruch Hu to appoint his successor, he used the lashon of Ish. You'll tell me the pasuk. Ish Asheruach Alakim Bai. Okay, so Ish there means a person. Mordechai Ish Yehudi. Okay, Ish Yehudi. V'shamartoes mishmeres Hashem Elokecha, and you should keep the mishmeres, the guard of Hashem, your God, the leches v'drachav, to go in His ways, lishmar chukaysav mitzvaysav v'mishpatav v'eid vaysav, to keep His chukim, mitzvahs, mishpatim, and edus, kakasav v'saras vayechi, as it says in the Chumash, l'man taskil es kol asher ta'aseh, so that you should understand all that you need to do, ve'es kol asher tifnei sham, and anything to which you turn. So he's telling him, this is, I guess, a more typical father to son tzava. He's giving him this tzava to be to follow the Torah. That's a normal tzava. Leman yokim Hashem es devarai asher dibar alai leimar. You should do this because you have a very special mission. The mission is yokim Hashem es devarai asher dibar alai leimar. It should be mekoyim, that which Hashem said. Im yishmeru vanecha es darkam loleches lefanai be'emes b'chol levavam u'chol nafsham. If the offspring, the children, the generations of David will follow the Torah to keep it b'chol lev u'b'chol nefesh, leimar lo yikaris l'cha ish mi'al kisei Yisrael. Then we have a promise that lo yikaris l'cha ish mi'al kisei Yisrael. Somebody will always survive. The Rambam says a very big chiddush in the Ad. He says that just like we have in Emunah, that Mashiach has to come from David, it has to come from Shlomo HaMelech. And the Mefarshei Rambam wonder where in the Gemara there's a source for such an idea that it has to come from an offspring of Shlomo. David had many children. So even though Shlomo's children were kings, but who says that the others can't be Bnei David? So the source appears to be from a Chazal, which we learn when we learn Rus. It says at the end of Rus that when Rus was born, rather when Rus had a child, that the ladies, all the Meizrais, all the ladies that sat around, gave blessings. They gave blessings that the child should be blessed and should be like our predecessors. So there's a Gemara. The Gemara relates the following. Most people are not aware of this, but it's an episode, Beferish in the Psukim in Malachim, that all of the descendants of David were murdered. At one point in the history, all of the descendants of David were murdered by Atalyahu. Who was Atalyahu? Atalyahu was the only woman that ever sat on the throne by Klal Yisrael. Atalyahu, who was related to Achav, seems to be a contradiction between Psukim, a sister or a daughter. When her husband died, her husband was the king, and when he died, Atalyahu was furious and murdered all the children of David, with the exception of a baby that was hidden in the Kodesh HaKodashim. And Yoash was hidden in the Kodesh HaKodashim. And when he got a little older, they didn't wait till he got too old. When he was 7 or 8 years old, they took him out and they rebelled against Atalyahu and assassinated her. And Yoash, under the patronage of the Kohen Gadol, became the Melech Yisrael. So he was the only one that survived. So Chazal have an expression. It says, were it not for the brachas of those women to Rus, the schus of those brachas, the Lashon Gemara is Nispakeya Beitzasa Shel David HaMelech. The offspring of David HaMelech would have been cut away. Nobody would have survived. It's an amazing Gemara when you think about it. We're saying that it's a schus when people tell you you have a child, and some people say Mazel Tov, you should whatever bracha they give you. Those brachas were the schus that ultimately stood for David HaMelech, the brachas that people give you. Now, if it's true or not true that the Stipler said that if you have a daughter you should give a kiddush, And if not, who knows what will happen. So, I don't know, the family of the Stipler insists that it's not true. I don't even know. I only know that people say. So people say the Stipler said it, and people say the Rav Chaim said he never said it. So I don't know which, or if any of them are true. But if it's true, the only thing that makes sense is not the kiddush, it's not the food, but the brachas that people give. People give a bracha, and they say to a person, you should be zeicha to build a bayis neman, you should be zeicha to raise the child, the Torah l'maysim taivim. Those brachas are the brachas that stood. Now that Gemara is a source for the Rambam. The Rambam says that the offspring have to be, the Mashiach has to be the offspring of Shlomo HaMelech. And the Gemara there says, El Molay, the brachas of those, Moizer Shel Mon Shel Belavan, I think it calls them, Nispakeh B'Tzasar Shel David HaMelech. What do you mean? David had plenty of other children who had offspring. There was only Shlomo's descendants that were killed. And it seems to be a support for the idea that Mashiach ben David has to come from Shlomo HaMelech. That's a possible source, and certainly this pasuk also seems to imply that. Alright, so this is the part of the bracha that makes sense to us. The rest of the haftara is astounding, that on his deathbed David will give a tzavah to take revenge from people, and Yitzhak Hashem will pick up on it tomorrow night.